Well met, everyone. I am Rich the Lich. Today's video, I want to talk to you about 5 mistakes that I make as a dungeon master. Now, I'll never pretend that I only ever make 5 mistakes. You know, when I make all these videos, these dungeon master advice, tips, tricks, things that you should focus on, things you shouldn't do, all the sorts of things that you ought to do to help you become a better DM, run a better game, so on and so forth. I don't take my own advice. I mess these things up as well. I am constantly making mistakes, and I will continue to make mistakes. We are human beings. But in doing this for 40 years, I definitely make less mistakes, or as I make mistakes, I've had enough time to sort of correct those, so I try not to make the same ones over and over again. But I think more importantly, my experience has allowed me to identify and acknowledge and respect that I make mistakes, and I always will. So, if there's some mistakes here that I'm going to talk about in these 5 that you also make, maybe just as I need to do, we can address them and work at getting better at them. In these 5 mistakes, as I said, there's many more than just 5, and these 5 are not in any particular order, but I'm going to give you 5. So, number 1, taking notes. I do not take good enough notes, whether it's simple note stuff like jotting down some names, but I think from the DM perspective, continuity things where I brought up some situation, I mentioned a key NPC or a key event that I'm hoping my PCs will look into, or that may come up later on, and then what happens is if you don't take notes on that, your PCs will ask you, hey, what was the name of that one NPC that was in, what was the name of that forest? And what was the name of the artifact we were going to get? Wasn't it that one? If you don't have good notes, you're going to lose some of that flow, right? That efficiency of your game. I think one of the problems that happens, why at least I am not diligent with taking notes, is I rely on some players at the table that always take notes. Now, having players that take notes is a very good thing. It's a benefit to you because it shows that your words have weight. Your players are willing to invest the time, the energy, the effort into jotting down, sometimes like a court reporter, everything that you say. And that really does show that what you are saying matters to them. But sometimes they're just going to jot down a few key names, key NPCs, locations, right? Key information. And I think sometimes I'm sitting back and I'm acknowledging and I'm aware that some of my players are jotting down these notes, and it allows me to be a little bit lazy. So try and circumvent or work your way around that. Just because your players take copious notes and they're very good note takers, it's your responsibility as a dungeon master to know where your game is going, to know what sort of questions your players have asked that have yet to be answered, or that you're not able to answer during that session. Because when you make that promise at the table, I don't have a name for that guy. I don't have an answer for that. I don't have the content that is going to take place when you ask, we're going to go left. What's behind that door? I don't have that yet. But you need to jot down the answers that you're supposed to be seeking so that during prep time, I know what content to create. How do I know if I need to create content for next session for the dungeon if I didn't jot down that my players had interest in going down into the dungeon? Because there's a lot of little details that you're going to forget. So that's the mistake. Take really good notes. Mistake number 2, not dividing up time equally to players. I made a video specifically on this where I talk about, you may have a veteran role player, right? The talkative person, the actual player of the party. Maybe it's a character that's the survivalist, the scout, the rogue, the one that should always be in the front, the one that is leading the rest of the party through uncharted and unexplored territory. And what happens is you can start to focus because, quite simply, that player is the only one that's actively doing something. And herein is the little trick, the little secret, or maybe not, that's the wrong word, but the thing to be aware of to help you identify, am I making that mistake? Am I giving too much time to that one player? if a player says, I'm going to go ahead and scout ahead, and the rest of the group has agreed to that, right? Because this player's the best at it. They've got survival, so they can track. He kind of knows what he's scouting ahead for. He's the highest in stealth, especially when you have players that are, jingling in full plate armor, and all they're going to do is mess up the silence of the environment, right? They're going to make a bunch of noise, so they're all going to hang back. And all the players and characters have basically said, we'll hang back for 2 minutes. You go ahead and go up ahead and let us know when it's safe to move up. So automatically that player is taking that character and doing something where the other characters they've indicated what they're doing is waiting. But what can happen is the player that's scouting ahead asks a question. You say, okay, go ahead and roll some dice, right? Make some skill checks, roll stealth. You turn the corner and you are leaning up against this rock face as you kind of work your way into the valley, and you look up ahead and you notice that there's like murder holes or really good sniping positions, and you know that goblin tribes reside here. And then the player asks you a question. Do I see any marks, motifs, heraldry, any indication that this is goblin territory? You know what I mean? Are there sticks and pikes and various dream catchery looking things hanging on the sides of walls, goblin icons? You ask the player asks questions. You as a DM, you answer. You ask for more skill rolls, and that cycle repeats itself. And you keep going in circles. But what's happened is 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Remember, the character's only gone for 2 minutes, but you've now taken 5, 6, 7 minutes. Here's the problem, though. If that is the only scout, if that's always the scout, you're always going to lean towards giving so much more time to that player, to that character. What you need to do is kind of stop things, pause it, and I've mentioned whether you use a stopwatch or like a sand timer, an hourglass or something, stop things, back up and say, hey, the rest of you, it's been about 2 minutes, he hasn't come back yet. Anyone want to do anything? What do you guys want to do? Now, here's the cool part. Even if the scout has sort of a lingering question, they ask something and they're waiting for as the DM, they're waiting for your answer in order to prompt further action so they can make another decision. Just say, okay, I know you asked the question about do you see any evidence of, like, the goblins have either run off, are they hiding, or maybe they're all dead. Just as a DM, say, hold on, I got your question, let's back up a little bit, and then you go to the other players at the table and start spreading out that energy, the questions and answers. Because therein lies the beauty of D&D, when you have 4, 5, 6 players, is not every character is going to handle the same situation in the same manner. And that dichotomy or the contrast, the paradox, maybe those are all the wrong words, but the difference, all the differing things that weave in and out of a situation that you present to the players and how they might handle it, and how one group or one player disagrees with the way the other player wants to handle it, that's the dynamic part of gameplay. And if you don't take the time to ask the other players questions, what do they want to do? How long do they want to wait? You never give the rogue a chance to be disturbed by his own party member making noise, because the paladin was nervous that the scout hasn't returned for 3 minutes. Maybe he thinks something's wrong. If that was discussed ahead of time, go ahead and scout ahead. We'll hang back 2 minutes. But you can simply lose sight and lose track when you're going back and forth with the rogue that, hey, rogue, you've been gone over 2 minutes, but it's still safe for you. Obviously, if it's dangerous, he's going to run back to the party. But you kind of indicate it's still safe for you. Do you want to push further? That player's going to ask another question. And if you give him more information, he's going to keep going further and further. But maybe that simple reminder of you've been gone more than 2 minutes. So that way the rogue doesn't get mad when the paladin comes lumbering up making noise. Because the paladin's like, we gave you 2 minutes. How do we know something didn't happen to you? But that only happens when you pause with the rogue and ask the paladin, what do you want to do? And give them their fair share. So spread time. That's mistake number 2. Mistake number 3 kind of leans into mistake number 2. Identify the weaker role players at the table. Maybe it's weaker role play in that they just don't pay attention. They're easily distracted. They're definitely not the player that takes notes. They're always asking you to repeat things. They don't know what's going on. Maybe they are socially just not as comfortable. Maybe they don't know the other players at the table. They're just not talkative, communicative. Maybe they are new to the game. They feel like whatever input they give is going to mess something up. Like they're so fearful of making a mistake, making the wrong choice. That is because, remember, you're playing cooperatively. They don't want to make a decision for the group. It's going to be to the detriment of the group if they choose the incorrect spell. So they're just going to sit back and they'll be followers. But this, like I said, leans into the second mistake because you want to give them ample time as well. That's the only way you're going to give them the opportunity to become better role players, is you have to give them chances to role play. Get their input. Show that they are just as valuable as everyone else at the table. So identify those weaker role players. Hold their hands a little bit. Maybe assign another player to help them out. If it's just they're hesitant to role play because they're not sure if there's a skill that works. So maybe another player can say, no, dude, anytime you want, you can roll persuasion or insight to see if you're reading this NPC the right way and give your input. You look at your skills. You are the best fighter in the party. Or you're the wizard that has these spells. You're the best with making sure we have alarm and Liamon's tiny hut and basically allowing us to have a safe long rest. It's your chance to speak up. So whenever that situation comes up, but as the DM, identify that. So that way you identify, even though the player especially might be weaker or just not familiar or quiet, identify the things their character is strongest or best at and present those situations so that way the other players can chime in and kind of give input and say, hey, character or player, you're the best at this. It's your turn. It's your turn. I'll help you through it. But we're going to defer to you here. So that's the third mistake, is not identifying the weaker role players and giving them ample time to just become better at the table. The fourth mistake, I think, is maybe preparing too much. It's a mistake that I make, I think what happens is the more energy and time you put into preparing something, the more you're going to want to use that. You don't want to waste your 8 hours of writing. So what's going to happen is you're going to end up reading for 8 hours. And you start to over-prepare, which can lead into railroading because you want your PCs to get to this content. You don't leave... I guess if I was to summarize the fourth mistake in one sentence, and I'll leave it at that, leave room for the players. Leave room for your players. The fifth mistake is maybe not specific to Dungeons and Dragons. It's certainly not specific to D&D, but it comes about, in my case, definitely it's a mistake I make a lot because D&D is currently my main creative outlet. This mistake is for all creative individuals out there, no matter what you're creating. If you're creating a new business, if you're creating a clothing company, has nothing to do with D&D. You're creating an art studio, whatever you're doing. But think of if you're creating an adventure, a module. You've been spinning the wheels for 15 years on a new monster book. The stuff that's in Tome of Beasts, Creature Codex, Monster Manual is not sufficient. You want to create your own monster book, right? With 1,900 different undead. Okay? I think there was a Librum Mortis or, a good book on the undead back in 2nd, 3rd edition or something. But anyway, you want to create that, or you want to create your own Eberron, your own Forgotten Realms, your own Critical Role Tal'Dorei Wildmount. You want to create your version of 6th edition, what that might look like. You want to create a map. You want to create tonight's session. The problem with creativity, we need to learn to put up creative walls. And what I mean by that is, inevitably, what happens, especially when you are a very creative person, new ideas keep flooding in while you are currently trying to finish one idea. While you're working on an idea, a new idea is going to come in. And inevitably, the new ideas are oftentimes more exciting because they just sound better. They're new, they're fresh. I just, an epiphany. I just came, I'm motivated, inspiration. I watched something last night. I read a video, or I did something, and I'm excited about this. I have an idea on this. And all of a sudden, you start highlighting text and deleting. You start cutting. You start rewriting. You start editing. You start rehashing. You start reworking it. You toss it in the trash as if it's analog, piece of paper and pencil. You close out Photoshop, you file new, do a new one. Whatever it may be, finish. the one word for the mistake, finish. The mistake is not finishing. Finish. It doesn't... Oftentimes when we start creating, we think, I've got to rework this so much. I have to noodle and detail it, they call it in the art world. I've got to noodle this so much because I know it can be better. Every drawing that you draw, every map you make, the incomplete, crazy part of the mind always wants to make the greatest drawing you've ever made. It won't happen. It doesn't happen like that. It's kind of serendipitous. It just sort of happens. Bob Ross, right? Happy accident. You just draw 7,000 maps, and inevitably one of them is going to be incredible because you've just done so many. I always tell people, you've got 10,000 shitty adventures under, that you've got to get through. When do you create the greatest D&D session ever? Get through the 10,000 shitty ones first. Get through those as fast as possible. Stop trying to create your magnum opus, the greatest thing ever. There's no such thing. You don't do that during the thought creative process. It just sort of happens at the end of work. So finish. Learn to finish. And I'm going to finish this video. Those are 5 mistakes that I don't have this figured out, guys. I got to work on it myself. So hopefully those things help you. And I'll see you guys in the next video.